Hello, welcome to the Healthy Alternatives podcast. I am Dr. Christine Sauer with DocChristine.com. Today's show is a recording of my radio show of the same name. Enjoy! Good afternoon, this is Dr. Christine Sauer, your host of the show Healthy Alternatives, here on 97.5 CIOE FM with livestream on communityradio.ca. Every Thursday at 12 noon Atlantic Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in today. In this show, I will talk, mostly with guests, about all aspects of health, healthcare and wellness, from conventional to alternative and everything in between. My mission for this radio show is to help change people's lives for the better, by informing them about different options to get and stay healthy and well, so they can choose for themselves which option might work in their case. And if you feel you are stuck in a dark place, I want to tell you, don't give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel for you too. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Christine Sauer with a Healthy Alternative, Your Quality of Life. And I'm very excited today to be with Professor Carolyn Fitzpatrick. She's assistant professor at the Université Sainte-Anne in Nova Scotia, where she teaches psychology and directs the Laboratoire d'études en petite, enfance. That's early childhood lab, right? She is also an appointed research fellow at the University of Johannesburg with the Center for Education Practice Research. Her work addresses the childhood origins of education and health inequities. The goal of her research is to inform social policies and public health initiatives aimed at improving child physical and mental health. Now, that's a very important topic, and I'm happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
So, Carolyn, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up being a professor at the Université Sainte-Anne? It's a Francophone university.
Well, I grew up in Montreal, so I grew up in a very bilingual family, in a very bilingual community. Did part of my studies in French and part in English. And as I was studying in Cégep, which is our stage between high school and university in Quebec, I fell in love with social sciences and in particular with social injustice and inequality. So as I developed a passion for that, for a better understanding inequalities, and ways to try to address these, I sort of learned, and it's a bit sad, that a lot of inequalities start very young in life and they actually originate in early childhood. So that's when I really decided that I wanted to pursue higher studies in child development.
Wow, that is amazing. So do you have a family of your own?
No, I don't.
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
just being a curious interviewer.
Yeah.
Now, how did you end up at the Université de Sainte-Anne?
Well, I mean, I'd been in Montreal wrapping up my second postdoc internship, and I saw this wonderful opportunity to move to a place that was very exotic to me, so a place right by the sea in Nova Scotia, which is a province that I found very beautiful, and just an opportunity to begin a career as a professor in psychology. So I just thought it looked like it would be a wonderful change.
Now, you initiated a study on screen time and child's development, especially in the time of COVID-19. What is that all about, and why did you focus on the young children and the screen time?
Absolutely. So I've been involved in studying screen time for quite a while now. Initially, my research was concerned with, because it started several years ago, we were examining screen time, but what that meant at the time was looking at mostly television. And in that research, my colleagues and I found that consistently, the more time that children spend in front of televisions in early childhood, the more we observed sort of detriments to their development, and this was across cognition, so their ability to learn math and their language abilities in terms of also their social development, and also in terms of their physical development, so their development of motor skills, their body weight, and their ability to perform in sports. So things have changed rapidly over the 10 years when it comes to media use and screen time. So approximately 5 years ago, I became interested in better understanding, well, how about these new screens, these mobile devices that are more interactive? What are their influence on development? So that sort of sparked my curiosity and better understanding in a very comprehensive way how screen time is influencing children. And recently, having received some funding, I was conducting the research, and then sort of as a natural experiment, as we call it in research, the COVID crisis happened. So this is providing, extremely challenging times, but also providing maybe an opportunity to understand how families are using screen times as entertainment, as educational tools, and also as a way to cope with some of the stress and the important difficulties that they might be facing. So that's one of the reasons why my team and I are especially interested in understanding media use during these times.
And that's fascinating. And I'm not sure if you're aware, my brain and mental health coach with Dr. Daniel Amen, and he said that if a child between the ages of 0 and 5 has more than half an hour of screen time combined a day, they have a 70% higher risk of getting ADHD or ADD. Did you find a similar correlation?
So what we looked at in some of our earlier work was mainly, again, it was television time, so screen time. Mm-hmm. And yes, there was an increased risk for developing attention problems and some behavior problems. Now, after that, in our sample, which is a population-based sample, so we looked at all children combined, we found that the risks become higher as screen time exceeds the recommendations of the World Health Organization, which is 1 hour a day for that age group. That being said, there are specific children that might be more vulnerable to screens, and there are also some contents that are more harmful and some that are more beneficial. So if a child is getting a steady diet of violent content and fast-paced cartoons and action type of contents early on, this is likely to be more damaging to attentional systems than a child who might be a bit less prone to distractibility and attention problems that's getting a mainly educational diet. So it's important, I think, to also take into account the content of media that they're receiving, as well as the context. So if a child is consistently viewing media on their own or using media on their own, the consequences are likely to be very different from a child who's more likely to co-view with parents or to use media in the context of interactions.
Now, let's go a little bit more in detail, because that is extremely important and interesting. And from observing parents, I've noticed that many use their cell phone or tablet as a babysitter. And that can be good, in my opinion. Is it good when parents guide the kids, or is it okay when the kids just pick what they want to see?
So it's absolutely understandable that there are times when parents need to use screens as a babysitter, and I think this has probably become really obvious to parents during the COVID-19 crisis. Parents are working from home, preschools, daycares are closed. Maybe there's another kid that needs to get homeschooled. So I think that can be, to the extent that it's beneficial for family functioning, I think that needs to be taken into account, and parents shouldn't be led to be shamed for doing it.
No, parents are in an extremely difficult situation sometimes. The kids are home, they both have to work from home. That doesn't work well. And no childcare available.
Absolutely. However, I think it's also important to educate parents that if they want children to benefit from the educational features of certain applications and certain contents, the best way to enhance the educational aspects is to co-view with their child and to ask questions, to have conversations, to point out certain things. So if they really want to maximize those benefits, co-viewing is really the way to go. And with older children, maybe co-viewing is not possible, but there's also parental mediation, which can involve asking questions about what types of content, what types of programs, or what types of social media children are using, can also be a great way to protect some of the harms and to increase some of the positive aspects.
Now that's really interesting. Tell us an example of children. What happens if they have too much screen time in practical? How can parents know if too much is too much for their kid? What behaviors does a child show?
So there are some general guidelines, and I'll explain those in a second, but every child can be slightly different. Some children are going to be more sensitive than others, and parents are, I think it's important to say, are ultimately the expert on their child, so they should also sort of trust themselves in that sense. But so for children below the age of 2, what the World Health Organization recommends is no screen time at all. So no media use, with the exception of video chat technologies, or something that might be more in the lines of listening to music. So music, listening to stories, video chat technologies can be healthy substitutes and are not.
I have a funny story of my own son when he was 6. He was a year and a half, and we had a big old radio, you know, those very old ones, and we put that in his room, and he could search for music that he liked. Guess what he liked? Mozart.
Wonderful.
It was very interesting for me what he actually chose. He loved Mozart.
And that can be a really interesting activity. So that the child develops some autonomy. They're controlling the content, and it's not. I mean, listening to music is by no way a media that we would consider a risk for development. After that, between the ages of 2 and 5, children should be exposed to no more than 1 hour per day, and this, as much as possible, should be educational content. Obviously, no violent content.
Educational content. Is that Sesame Street? Is that educational content?
Sesame Street would probably be one of the best options. So educational or at least child-directed content. So avoid adult types of contents, any kind of violence for that age group. And as much as possible, to encourage a good night's sleep, it's probably best to avoid screens 1 hour before bedtime.
Well, that's a general recommendation even for adults.
Absolutely.
Because of the blue light inhibiting the melatonin in our brain, and that's very important. And I agree, it's even more important for children.
Absolutely. And then beyond that, 5 and up, the recommendation is no more than 2 hours per day. And
that's
obviously
combined screen time, right? TV and computers and devices?
Yes, combined screen time. And this generally would exclude time spent on a laptop, a computer for homework. So that could be taken out of the equation. That being said, you're asking about some signs that children might be getting too much screen time. The lights in certain screens can be extremely difficult on children's eyes. So that can be something also to look out for, especially now that they're getting screen time during school hours, screen time during leisure. It's not cost-free for children's visual development. So that's also something possibly to keep in mind, and to ensure that children are, I think, as important as limiting screen time is ensuring that they have enough time for healthy activities, healthy amount of sleep. So for young children, between 10 and 13 hours a day. For older children, the 10 hours, physical activity at least 1 hour per day, time to play outside, and time to socialize and engage in imaginative forms of play.
Imaginative forms of play would be Lego bricks, and drawing, doing crafts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's important that parents realize that, because I know that so many parents have their kids on the devices all day, basically, not just 2 hours. It will be a shock to know for many parents that maybe are not aware how harmful that can be. Let us know a little bit more about your current research project.
So in my current research project, my team and I are aiming to collect information on 300 Nova Scotia families. So we're interested in preschool age children, but also their families' media habits. So what type of devices they have in the home, how frequently they use them, what are parents' attitudes and practices around media use in the family.
So how old are preschoolers for your study?
So we're looking for children between the ages of 2 and 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gathering all this information. We're also going to look at children's language development and their development of executive function skills, which is the ability to concentrate and control behavior and control attention. So we're looking at those very important skills.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at that over a period of 2 years. So we're going to gather information now during the summer, follow up with parents again 6 months from now, and then follow up hopefully a third time approximately a year from now. So we'll have.
So how do you assess it, with questionnaires or do you do tests?
Yeah, so we're using, so for the media use, we have a questionnaire. We also ask parents to complete a digital diary, so 24-hour recall of everything they did in the previous day. And that allows us to gather information without them having a chance to forget. When did they use media? Not only as a primary activity, but also did they use media during supper time, or did they use media during leisure time? So media as a primary, but also a secondary activity. When they used media specifically, what was it, on what type of device, or what type of application, or what type of show? And also, what was the context? So was the child using media to keep busy? Was the child watching a program with their grandparent or a sibling? So information on how long, what the media use was, and what the context was. And we're also asking parents to get a better idea of family media use, to install an application on their telephone for about 2 days, so we can see, well, during the day, when do parents use their phone more, and what type of activities are they doing on their phone?
Okay, that's quite interesting. And why did you focus on the young children?
Well, so you might know this being in the health field, but early childhood is one of the times in our life where our brain is undergoing the most rapid development.
Absolutely.
And during the preschool years, a lot of this development is happening in the prefrontal cortex, so the frontal area of the brain. And this part of the brain is essential, extremely important for the development of language skills. So it's what's going to support eventually the ability to read and write. It's also important for planning, decision-making, and for the ability to control attention, behavior, and emotion. So it really is an important and a very, very important time for brain development. So as children develop, this prefrontal cortex develops in part from maturation and in part from genetic reasons, but also depends tremendously on the environment.
Yeah.
And probably the best environmental influence is a reciprocal, sensitive exchange with the caregiver. So if children don't get enough interaction with caregivers, don't get enough high quality interactions that are tailored, sensitive to their developmental state and to their own personal strengths and weaknesses, well, that development doesn't happen at an optimal rate. So I think it's really important to look at children during that sort of sensitive time because this might be the period in life where media is likely to have the most profound, either positive or negative influence.
Wow, yeah, that is extremely interesting. And the results of the study hopefully will be published in both languages, English and French?
Yes, we will do, I think as is important to do with most research that is, I think, highly of potential importance to parents. Mm-hmm. There will be most likely scientific publications, which are typically in English, but then a series of, we hope, reports and knowledge translation activities, talks, communications, media releases, which will be in both languages to reach parents in both.
Wow, that will be extremely important and extremely interesting because there's not that many out there, I think, about screen time and little children. And there's so much use of screen time by little children. And sometimes it gets actually addictive, even for little children. Did you see that? I've noticed that sometimes when I watch parents, the kid starts to demand to get a screen, and the parents give in because they don't want to put up with the irate child. Did you see something in smaller children like that too?
Well, I mean, that's very interesting what you're mentioning, because you asked also about signs that the child might be getting too much screen time, and that could definitely be a sign, because a lot of contents are designed to activate the reward system in young children. A lot of media producers have enough of a grasp on psychology and young children's psychology to design contents that they know children are going to want to watch and rewatch. So this repeated activation of the reward system can mean for some children, well, an hour is not enough anymore. Now they want 2 hours or 3 hours. So as parents can sort of be sensitive to this and see, well, if I remove the media, does the child become irate or become irritable? Because these are signs in a sense of withdrawal. So does the child go through these kinds of fits and difficulties when you remove the media? And that might be a sign that, well, it's time to taper them down or to try and reduce some of their intake of screens.
Yeah, some parents hesitate to do that because they just don't want to deal with the angry child that can result. And when the children are older, I've seen that really angry child if the parents give in too often, I think.
And it's so important during those early years, the 3, 4, and 5-year-old time, for children to develop the ability to regulate frustration and to handle their emotions. So it can become a vicious circle if, when the child becomes irate, they receive a screen, it calms them down, but they're not learning how to actually deal with their frustration and to deal with their emotions. They're just being given a way to avoid those negative feelings. So that's I think that's very important to consider.
So that would be considered kind of an addiction to those media.
Yes, it's not. We can't call it an addiction at this point, because I think the DSM is still out on this. But some scientists would argue that it is possible, but it still remains unconfirmed at this point.
Sure, you're all scientific, and that's wonderful. And I understand that as a doctor myself. I used to be very scientific, and now I do more the translation into general knowledge, which is a lot of fun too. Yeah. And so what parents should participate in your study?
So we are looking for any Nova Scotia parent that has a preschooler or 2, if the siblings can participate, between the ages of 2 and 4.5. So beyond that, we don't have any restrictions. I can give the information, the detailed information to participate after. I think I strongly encourage parents to participate, because not only is this going to help us better understand how people are using media and how children develop during a global health crisis, there are very few studies of Nova Scotia families. So by getting this information on early childhood development and media use, well, down the line, we're hoping that we might be able to improve services that are available to parents and better understand their needs and how we can better resource them. So
that's awesome. Now, where can parents go to get more information about that? I know you have a website.
Yeah, so the best way, because our website is in French, so the best way to avoid language confusion, I'm just going to ask parents to Google NS Preschooler Screen Time Study.
Okay.
And I should mention that every participating parent, for every time they participate, will receive a $50 Amazon gift certificate as a thank you for their time.
No, that's absolutely lovely. That's a nice incentive that everybody can know, can use that. And tell me a little bit about more what is expected as a result of that study. So how can parents increase digital health in their children?
Well, we're really hoping to be able to, just as a first objective, we just want to see, well, what's going on in the family. So how much are they using, and what are they using the most, and for what reasons are they using? So sort of just to get a portrait of media use in Nova Scotia families with young children. And then we're also hoping to be able to tease apart what are the situations in which media is the most harmful for development, and which are the situations in which it's the most likely to benefit development. Because I think parents, it's very hard, it's a huge challenge for many of them to limit screen time if we just give them an hour recommendation. But if we could say, well, this type of program under this type of interaction at this time of the day is probably your best bet, they can have a better hierarchy of recommendations that they can use to guide their behavior.
Wow, that's really, really important and really fascinating. And I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show. Thank you so much, Caroline. And I'm very much looking forward to the results, and I hope you keep me in the loop so I can publicize the results.
Absolutely.
And that is wonderful. And I wish you all the best. I wish I had small children. No, not really. I have grandchildren, but not in Nova Scotia. They're not eligible for the study. And I want to encourage all parents that have children in that age to participate. It's, of course, it will be in the end anonymized, so nobody can find out that it was your child that got too much screen time. So thank you very much and all the best.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.